Why am I nervous? I'm never nervous. I think it's good if everyone in the back can hear, right? Okay. Thank you, Tamar, for your help. Okay. I want to begin with a story. As I was walking out of the Shloshim for Binyamin in our community, we lived down the hill in Ramat Shiloh. I was walking out with a neighbor. We were actually running to a bar mitzvah that night, talk about shifting of gears. And she tells me this story from before the loss of Binyamin about Jen. And I want to begin with this story. The people on my block, almost every house on my block has a boy who's in the army. And one day, Jen showed up at everyone's house with a single sunflower in a vase. And I was walking out with my friend, and she said she had to borrow sugar by a friend, and she sees by her 2 vases with sunflowers because she had 2 boys in the army. The reason I tell this story is before the loss of Binyamin, Jen was already like this incredible person in our community. She represented Torah, Emunah, on a private scale. She was a home people would turn to for content. If there was slichot or a shir in shul, she would be there. Davening in shul on Shabbos, she for sure was a fixture. She was someone that the community would turn towards for Torah. She's also, as a sidebar on her private level, she's a workout instructor, and it fits. She's self-disciplined, she's healthy. Like sometimes I'd see her walking, I'm like, why can't I be more like Jen? That was on a private scale. And then there was the terrible experience that Klal Yisrael went through on a public level and on a private level, the loss of her son. I remember standing at the funeral and people were trying to protect themselves from the rain, and I chose not to. I had to throw out my shoes after. I remember they were like not salvageable, but I felt like Shemayim was crying. Very similar to what's going on right now, the loss of 24 boys, and if you look at the weather for the next few days, it's just rain, 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 and I'm like, there was something about standing at that funeral in the rain that helped to express the loss for Klal Yisrael. But what's happened since that loss? Jen has taken this challenge and moved to the Klal. Not just focusing for her family on faith, but becoming a pillar. She's traveling to the States in a week or so to speak to people in America and reflect on her loss. Transferring the things that for so long she held private to the public domain. When I was at the Shloshim in my community, she turned it into a time of growth, reading a paper of goals that her son had in his life that forced everyone to go inwards about their lives. Her son wasn't petty. He didn't have a lot of belongings, made us all look at our we, too gashmi, too physical in our lives. Her son had a passion for the land of Israel, which forced everyone to go inwards and say, what is my relationship to the land? Do I self-sacrifice for the land the way he did? Everything about her son has become a vehicle towards faith and also growth for the people around her. It's such a zchus for us to bring Jen to this forum of Tiferet. Our school was standing there that day when you left to the funeral. They will never forget that image. It's forever carved in their memory. So without further ado, Jen Airley.
For me, coming from hearing words out of Mrs. Schneider's mouth like that are pretty big and pretty heavy for me, so I appreciate that. Where to begin? First of all, just know, going to the States was like a really, really, really big deal for me. I had been asked a few times to go, and I just kept saying no. And even certain people said you have to go, and I still wasn't able to digest that. And while the OU was flying me in for the Nachyo Museum, which is an amazing story in and of itself, because Adina Schmidman came to the Shiva house, and I was all upset that now I was behind. And because you can't, right, you're not supposed to learn during Avelis, you should never know, but that's a thing, during the week of Shiva. And I was so upset that I was ruining my hatmada on that. And she came into the house, and it was we had just finished, I had missed the last few days of Nehemiah, and the day she came was the first day of Divrei Yamim. So she's you're not the first person that's missing for Shiva. Pick back up, start from now, and move forward. Don't worry about missing, which of course I can't handle that. I have to fill that in because that's my integrity. But what she said was just the beautiful piece of just pick up and move forward. And that was my first meeting with Adina Schmidman, who runs the OU Women Initiative, which is the Nachyomi program, which by the way is going to be starting a new cycle now. I'm a big, big, big fan. So then when she asked to go, if I would go, I actually said no. And then I just said, I can't see leaving Eretz Yisrael. It's not, I don't want. And then she's maybe consider it. I said, I'll consider. She said, thank you for considering. And that was the end of that conversation. And then we went to Kever Rachel for Yom Kippur Katan a couple of weeks ago. And I just said, please, Hashem, Rachel, make it obvious. If you think I should go, just make it clear. And then that afternoon, from Kever Rachel, somebody asked me for a ride home, and I said, listen, she says, but because I'm in a rush. I could take the bus that's going straight to Ramat Beit Shemesh, but I'm in a rush. So if I go in the car with you, I'm first going to daven mincha. It's going to be a while. And she's okay, fine, I'll wait for you. So I thought odd. And the kitzur gave her a ride, and as we get to the house, again, she's getting messages that she really is in a rush, and she's still sitting in the car. So it's told her that I was considering flying in, and she gave me all the reasons why I should. I was okay, I guess that's something. And the next morning I messaged her, I'm just tell me what your gut feeling is saying. It's a person I hold by. And she's you need to go speak to the women, because when you speak to the women, you can pull in everybody else. So I still didn't make a ticket because I was still unsure, whatever. I know he's sending me every sign, and I still I'm a little thick in the head sometimes. Then we had a meeting with Rav Shmuel Eliyahu about a project that we wanted to do for Binyamin, and he was very excited about the project. And then my husband made a comment about America. You must go. You must go. And I said, but if I go and I'm stuck there when Mashiach comes, I'm going to be very upset. I'm going to be behind everybody else, just trying to get on the planes. I'm going to be the last person because my ticket's not for... And he said, if you're giving a shir, when Mashiach comes, you finish the shir. And then you come. I said, okay, now I'm going. So that's a little bit of the America trip. Totally nothing necessarily to do with Binyamin, but Beseda. Jen's life. You're gonna get a lot of raw Jen. I mean, you're getting raw Jen coming out of work, just no fancy. Straight out. Okay, so I guess you got to see me once before. So hi, Jen, mom of 6 Baruch Hashem beautiful children. Oldest is Sarah, 23, then Binyamin, and then a few other boys, and then my little Hannah. And Binyamin was a big brother to everybody, even to the older sister. She didn't like it always, but kacha. And we moved here in 2006, so that's 17 years ago, from the 5 towns. That was our last stop, and I'm actually from Florida. So my husband's from Manchester, we're a bit of all over, and here we are. And I thank Hashem constantly for the gift of being here and living here and being part of our nation and in our land. It's a big, huge, huge bracha and zchut, and especially now during these times, while as dark as they may seem, they are ever, ever, ever so bright. I kid you not, and I hope you're able to see that too. I feel like it's true what you're saying about the rain. I mean, okay, so whoever was there the day of the Levaya knows that was the first big rain. Right, that was like the pouring, the skies open, somewhat when we were leaving, but mamish at the Levaya itself, the skies open. And I know people said it's because Hashem is crying, but all I can say is because Binyamin wants the land to grow. He's just like, it needs more water, it needs more water. Although I heard the next morning that there were Hamasnikim in tunnels in Gaza that ended up, they were drowning and they came out with their hands up because of all the rain. I said, listen, Binyamin likes that also, so listen, I'll take that too. But it's also not, if you realize like these rains, I mean, we know the rains in Eretz Yisrael are like, they're not just stam rain. We live on a different plane in Eretz Yisrael. I'm sure you've seen this, with your time here. The fact that since the Levaya, the first rains now started Rosh Chodesh Shvat. That was the first day of this cycle of rain. It had not rained really in between. Which is quite significant if you understand the month of Shvat and what the month is about and what we're about to celebrate tonight. So, mamash lo stam, and lo stam, that of course somebody had told me that when somebody else, a different Levaya was going, she's like, I'm expecting it to rain, right? But only rains at certain times. And definitely the 24 gadol. And yeah, it'll rain for a little while. Inside, outside. But I'd like to believe that they're tears of joy. I'd like to believe Hashem, He's handpicking each and every one of these soldiers and each and every one of the families who are parents and siblings and children of these soldiers. There's a way bigger picture of what's going on. Binyamin himself wrote in his notebook while he was in Gaza that this war in Gaza is about the Ktanim. Zarak Ktanim ba'Gaza. The fight out there is just for the small ones. And he wrote, HaMilchama Gdola is just the tefillot. And I think that's really, really the big message. Right? That it's true. This war in Gaza, it's significant. There are lives lost, but if you ask any soldier who's there about what's it like inside there, they will say that in each house in Gaza, the Hamasnikim, you know what they have a picture of? Alaska, the Dome of the Rock in Yerushalayim. Almost every single house they go into, aside from ammunition and all of them, a picture of Yerushalayim. They know what this war is about. This is what they're fighting for. And if we realize that that's really what this war is about, we'll fight it very differently. When last week I got a letter from Bibi Netanyahu. Obviously he wrote it by hand, obviously he signed it with his own signature, I got no letter. But he wrote that Binyamin, what, this, that, whatever he picked up from online, he got the info, and Nilcham Leman Habayit. He's fighting for the house. Now this is a term that's colloquially used in Israel. Like they say, this war is like for the house. What does it mean? If you ask a regular Israeli what it means, and I have done this, they'll say something like, for the nation, for Israel as a whole, for the Jewish pride. They don't even realize what they're saying. If they were to know the godless of what they were saying, it's really for the Bayit. It's really for the Beis HaMikdash. And halavai, if we would all have our eyes set on the Beis HaMikdash like they have it for Alaska, we'd win this war like that because we'd be davening for it like that. Such a message. It's true. They really are fighting and our soldiers are really there and they're doing the physical part, but if you ask any soldier, they know it's more than that. I've done this. Binyamin's friends are only first now coming out of Gaza, and I'm asking them these questions. They see Yad Hashem, the religious ones, the non-religious ones, the atheist ones, they're all seeing it. And they believe it. All the ones who are singing, Einod Milvado and Ani Ma'amin and Anachnu B'nei, all of them, religious and not religious, even the non-Jewish. They're all saying it. So I told them, this gives me great comfort, because now they're going to start coming out of Gaza, and they get to start teaching us what they see inside. And this is gadol, because we can just, we know they're all, I keep saying these soldiers, I had to speak. I spoke a few weeks ago in Shari Chesed. And Shari Chesed is quite a Haredi community. And I was told by Rabbi Tio Goldberg before, and he said, just know you might be the first mother of a soldier they're speaking to. So I was so psyched. Because I'm like, I'm going to show them. And I just talked about these tzaddikim that are out there fighting. No klipot. They have no more external barriers to them. They're all davening. They're all connecting. They don't care about their clothes. They don't care about a shower. They couldn't care less about fancy food, just enough that's going to give them their energy. All the mothers and all the everybody's wants to give them the best of the best of the best. They don't care. They want to survive, and they want to live, and they want that we should live. And so I was very proudly relaying this message. But this is it. They have all their external Gashmi focuses are completely strict. They're completely amstic. This is why they're able to fight the war for us. I'll go back a little bit to Binyamin. I'll start with the end, because then it'll shed light on because he died the way he lived. There was a crowd, a battle that was going on. They were watching, they knew that these 3 terrorists had run into a building, into a house, and they were going to get them, because these 3 terrorists that were in the house were shooting all the people, the soldiers that were outside of the house. Soldiers were getting wounded, and one commander from a different pluga, a different group entirely, had said, that's it, we gotta go, I'm going in, because they can't keep shooting my guys. So this commander was with his right-hand man. Jamal Abbas this Jewish soldier is the commander, this Mempeh, and his right-hand man, Shachar Friedman from Yerushalayim. And they said they were going in, and Binyamin, who was with a different group, further back, he literally pushed his way up front, and he said, you're not going in without me. Binyamin didn't even know the 2 of them, but Binyamin was in charge of a very big machine gun called a Negev. And Binyamin was very big and very strong, tall, quite good looking to say. And he was. Just saying. And he was very strong, and he was in charge of this particular machine gun called a Negev. And so he said, I'm going in with you, I'm your Negevist. And he pushed his way, and he went in with them. They had thrown in all the grenades and all sorts, and I'll even say, Binyamin could have had himself killed many, many times over. He's a daredevil, risk taker, not so easy to raise as a parent raising a child like that. Lots of sleepless nights, many tears, many tefillot. But he was never afraid to die. I'll talk about this a bit more afterwards, but he had no fear. Or if he did, he never showed it. But in fact, even in this battle, at one point, he slipped and he's on the floor, and they threw a grenade into the room, and the grenade is now right next to Binyamin on the floor. And Binyamin very calmly gets himself up, no qualms. They said he didn't even look, he wasn't alarmed. He saw it, he picked himself up, ran out, grenade goes off. See, he wasn't going to get killed in any friendly fire in any simple way. He went in, he pushed himself forward, he gets into the room, they threw grenades. There was one Hamasnik that was hiding in the corner, the grenade didn't get him. The other guy was on the floor dead. They thought that, that's it, that was all that was in there. But the guy in the corner killed the 3 of them. And if we were to ask Binyamin, if we had the chance to ask Binyamin, okay, would you still do that again? He would say yes. And he would say yes again, and he would say yes again. Because he believed in doing what needed to get done to protect other people. In fact, the last conversation I had with him, we saw him 3 weeks before this, and the last thing I said to him is, Binyamin, please just take care of yourself a little bit. I know not a lot, just a little. Because I knew this was how it was going to go. Because he doesn't care about himself enough, so he cares more about saving the cloud. And not because he had no self-confidence. He had plenty. But he cares about the cloud, and he cares about the nation as a whole, and his land. And that is how he lived his entire life, protecting the land, protecting people, even and mostly for those he didn't know. When Binyamin wasn't in the army, he would spend his time on a particular farm out in Neve Tzuf. We call it here in Israel a Chavah, because farm denotes some sort of like pasturally green, beautiful, orchard, I don't know what, with animals and bunnies running around, but it's not like that. The Chavah that Binyamin worked at and spent a lot of his time at since he was 16 is out by Neve Tzuf in the Shomron. So basically just a little background in the Shomron and in many other places, and also Har Yehuda, actually all around Israel really. They have communities, and when they're Arabs not so far away, outside of the community they set up a farm. And it's for herding cattle, and it keeps the Arabs just a bit further out. So they would set these, and every so often, if they need to expand the farm, and the Arabs are coming closer, they expand a little bit to keep them further back. 7. So when Binyamin was 16, in 11th grade, he one of his friends was working at this particular farm, and he decided he's going to go with him, which worked out very well timing-wise, because then it was Corona. And now this is something that he needs to do instead of being on lockdown. He needs to be at the farm. That's, Chiyoni over here, that's a necessity. So he was allowed to go there and was able to work. So for a kid who can't sit still for a few minutes and doesn't like to waste time, this was the greatest bracha. Except for the fact that it was very dangerous. Which again, it didn't faze him, but it fazed the rest of us who worried about him. So he would spend his time out there. And then when Corona, things started opening, and he would go to school, which was down in Eilat. Then he would go from Eilat to the farm whenever he could, which was probably about a 5-hour journey. And that was where he would spend his Shabbos, sometimes at home and sometimes on the farm. If he would go to the farm for Shabbos, he would come to us Thursday before, or vice versa. 7. We're not sure which one he considered his main home, the farm or Ramat Beit Shemesh. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I won't admit it publicly. He didn't really like Ramat Beit Shemesh. He was different. And he needed nature, he needed the fields. He built his own house out there, not any house you would choose to live in. Bathroom was, a tire until they hooked up water, and some electricity. And this is how he lived. And no papas. He was the happiest guy. And so when he would go to the farm, he would graze the cows, herd the cows, take the cows for herd, right? He would herd cows, taking them grazing, and do shmirah, stay up all night watching, making sure the Arabs aren't coming closer. And that's how he spent his time outside of school, then outside of Hesder, and outside of army. This is how he spent his time. He'd get friends to come there. It wasn't all like solemn, right? He had his friends, and they would come and they would enjoy out there. And this is how he spent his time. Mm-hmm. So when I say that he could have had himself killed many times before, he had many incidents with Arabs. There was a video that went viral during Shiva of he was out herding cows with one other guy. There were about 150 Arabs starting to come down towards them from the village nearby, and all shouting. The friend was videoing this. You see in the video, they're all shouting Allah Akbar, coming towards them, and the guy Binyamin's in the front with the cow, and the second guy's a bit further back, and the guy is on the phone with the army saying, "En lanu neshek, tzrichim tzahal. We have no ammo with us. We need you guys. We need the army. We need the army." Interesting, the guy who was called came over to us. We didn't need verification. We saw the video, but he was just telling us how he couldn't believe these guys didn't sound like they were afraid. But you see in the video, Binyamin is up with the cows, and he doesn't even take a step back. In fact, he just takes steps forward. like towards them, like, oh yeah. Obviously the army came because there was more to Binyamin's story, but when the guy, when his friends came to the Shiva house, he told us that he asked Binyamin, what would we have done? And Binyamin just said, Tamut nafshi b'plishtim, we would just fight. Simple. To him, that's what you do. And there were many stories, also lynchings, all sorts. Binyamin either fought them off or got a few of them down, the rest of them ran off. Binyamin didn't believe in smartphones. He thought they were really dangerous, really bad, damaging. And so one time he has the little Nokia, yeah? And then one time the Arabs are coming towards them, they're surrounding them a little bit, and Binyamin takes out his Nokia and pretends he's videoing them. And they run away. Sometimes his brain's not all power, but But no fear. And I think that's because he believed in what he was doing. He believed what he was doing was the right thing, and I will just do it. There was one time the owner of the farm, Zvi, said to us that one time Binyamin was on the next mountain with the cows. And he calls Binyamin and he says, I see you're there, binoculars, I see you're there, come back, you're too far. Binyamin had a tendency to push past limits. And so he was too far, and he said, come back. And Binyamin said, they need to see that we're here. The Arabs need to know this is ours. You see, when Binyamin believes that something is right, there's no stopping him. When something needs to get done, he'll do it. And he was ready to die for this country. He said it even before the war started, if I have to die for Eretz Yisrael, I will die for Eretz Yisrael. And I guess because he lived with that in mind, he was able to really live life. And he maxed his life. In every way, not just in all the fun, crazy things, which he did plenty of, but in all the serious ways, in all the midot. He really, there was one book that came back from the army that was his. Meaning, the army, when they gave us all his stuff, it's all like the siddur that the army gives, the Tanakh that the army gives, all the different, halacha yomis. There was a sefer that was there that was not from the army. And that was Ki Tetzei ala milchama, when you go out to war. And then the subtitle is Milchemet HaYetzer. Binyamin was all about internal strength, even though there was a lot of physical strength. That, Baruch Hashem, was very natural for him. Came naturally. He didn't have to train hard, even though he did his things. Obviously, he did a lot of physical labor. So I guess toch kedei, it's a lot of muscle strengthening. But his inner strength was actually even stronger. Mamash zachinu. I don't know. I sometimes think, how were we zocha? But we are. And Binyamin's inner strength still is fighting hard. We're seeing the most incredible things, and Am Yisrael is not just that they've become, not just as a nation what we've become. I mean, I'm sure you can look at yourselves and you've already seen how you've changed tremendously. I would like to believe in the last few months, but in the last, not just because you came to Eretz Yisrael for your amazing year at Tiferet, but what the Am is needing from you and what you are giving to the Am. I have no doubt that Tiferet is very involved in many programs, and you're doing a lot of things and donating a lot of your time. I mean, this is what Tiferet does. And you're seeing what it's doing to you. Just last night, Monday night, Binyamin's friends came, a few other friends came from the army that we had never met before. You don't get parent-teacher conferences when you're in the army. So we never meet other parents, right? So other kids, other parents. So I never knew who his friends are, just knew names. And I'd see pictures of them, and I'm like, oh, that's so nice. I have no idea who they are, but now I'm getting to meet them. And they came and they said, we were talking about a particular hike that they had to do as part of training initially, and a very, very steep hike. In fact, I personally know of this hike, not because I've ever done it, but because when I was looking into doing a trail run in another country, I was trying to figure out where in Israel I could train. And that was the only place in Israel I could train was on this particular mountain that they did. So I know that is 2,850 meters up. So they had to train on this hill, on this mountain, with all their gear. again, I always picture like I could fit into his backpack. That's how much they carry. And then his Negev gun is also about 20-something pounds. That's just his gun. So anyway, they did this hike once. Binyamin was having a hard time, as all of them were. And then they had to do it 3 more times. I don't think in a row. But by the last time, Binyamin was, you can see in pictures, and they showed me pictures, Binyamin is either in the front or in the back. He's either the first one or the last one. Now, I'm a choveshet for Mada, I know. But you always have to worry most about the people in the front of the teal and in the back of the teal, because the ones who are in the front they push themselves so much, you have to worry about them. Or in the back, because they're struggling. But Binyamin was the front and the back out of strength. Binyamin was either pulling or pushing. He was either helping them come up or pushing them from behind. In fact, his friend last night, on Monday night, what did he tell me? He said that he was struggling so badly with this hike. Binyamin said, this is godless. Binyamin said to him, put your hand on the person in front of you's back. Push the guy in front of you. And he said, I can't do it. I'm struggling. I have no more koach. And Binyamin said, push the guy in front of you. Because if you help him, you'll get strength. Now, I don't know if he had like some sort of, he never learned psychology. This all came naturally to him. And maybe physiologically, I'm like trying to figure out if there's really something to it. But you definitely get strength when you're helping somebody else. And it happens to be, he ran the Jerusalem half marathon with me 2 years ago. And we got to a point in the race where, like, again, Jabotinsky, it's a nice mechubad hill up. And he's pushing me. To which last night, I'm like, oh, maybe he was actually struggling when he was pushing me, but whatever. I doubt it. So he's pushing me, Mommy, let's go. And I'm like, Binyamin, you go ahead. I'm good with my pace. You want to go faster? Because I go. And no, I'm doing this with you. Okay. But Mommy, can we go a little faster? No. And anyway, so if anybody, are there any runners in this group? I feel like I see some girls running. Yafe. Okay. So you know, when you want to, we know another runner around here. When you want to, when you're running your race, you have a long way to go. You need to conserve some energy, right? And then you get to a point where you know that you're getting closer to the end, but you still need to conserve energy. See, Binyamin didn't know that, or he knew that but didn't care. And he's like, Mommy, can we start sprinting? I'm like, it's at kilometer 19, sweetie, we have time. Okay, Mommy, we're at 19 and a half, can we start sprinting? Not yet, I know. Can we go? Binyamin, so you go. Get off my... Anyway, see, then we got to 20 and a bit, probably 20.5. And I said, now you can see the end. Now we start sprinting. See, when you have an end in sight, you can floor it. And I feel like this is where we are right now. I feel like this gullus has to be ending soon. It has to be. It doesn't make sense otherwise. And if we can feel that Geula is in sight, you can just push whatever you can. And when my husband and I speak together, he's very into like telling people to take on something small, something sustainable. All the words about El, don't take on I'm never going to speak Lashon Hara. I'm not going to speak Lashon Hara from 9 to 9:05, right? And so he's all about taking on small and sustainable, and I'm very much take on the world. So you can listen to either one of us, but he's not here to say that, so you're not listening to me. About if we really feel that we can be Zoch of Geula, if we just use that last Hashem and push with it, I don't know what could be. But I feel, were you there on Monday's class? No, you weren't there. There was, I taught a class on Monday, and an exercise class, and I had to leave a few minutes early, yeah? So instead of finishing at 9:25, okay. So then the last few minutes, we're pounding it out, pushing them like crazy. Come on, guys, we're almost done. Just a little harder. Come on. Go. Class is shorter. You can push harder. They didn't it was only 5 minutes shorter. It wasn't like they only had a HIIT workout of 7 minutes, but that's really the key. if you feel that it's not so much longer, you can push harder. Now, in all honesty, I think Binyamin knew that. I think that because he was willing to risk his life for the country at any time, he was able to push harder. And he pushed. The things that he accomplished now he wasn't always the Binyamin that we know about now. He was a pain in the he was difficult. Here's why I feel guilty, Binyamin, I'm sorry, because I feel like you're not supposed to bring up somebody's past, but whatever, we're all learning from it, so it's okay. But he was not an easy child to raise, not an easy teen to raise. He had a lot of energy and liked to drive a lot of people crazy, and he liked to stay out for many hours. He was a typical, not for you, of course, you're not like that, but he was a typical teenager outside, and there were a lot of tefillos and a lot of tears, a lot of eitzah that went into trying to raise him well. And at 16, he went to Uman, and he was a bit frustrated afterwards that he didn't see like the shine lights. Came back and he was upset. He thought he was gonna go and that was gonna like solve everything. He wanted answers, he wanted to fly it, and he wanted to like have the sparks under him to set the rocket off. And he was actually frustrated when he came back that he didn't feel like the big light. To which his friend, who also came over, said 2 weeks later, he said, but Binyamin, like you're putting tefillin on every day now. Binyamin, you're keeping Shabbos so much more. Like obviously it did something, right? It was he wanted the big bang, but it was all cumulative. The growth was cumulative, and Binyamin actually really attributes his big upward turn to Oman. Whether it was Rabbi Nachman, whether it was Baal Shem Tov, or whether it was just because Binyamin was ready, and that's why he made the trip. But he obviously had the potential there, and he was ready to fly. And that was and I think from the age of 16 to 21 was his real big, the big revolution. And everything we know about Binyamin, it's almost like hard to look at pictures of him before 16, with his longer. Anyway, you got the picture. Because you're like, that wasn't Binyamin, but those were his building blocks. That's actually the pieces of Binyamin. There was, it was actually crazy. I work with one of the people I work with at MADA. So mind-blowing, this whole thing. One of the people I work with at MADA came to the Shiva house and he asked me, Jen, what do you need? And I said, Masorati, meaning traditionally very light dati. How about, I don't know how you want to classify him, but whatever. Sometimes, most of the time, would wear a little kippah. Most of the time as in, or not. And he, I don't know what he does for Shabbos, but I knew he didn't daven, because we've had these discussions before. So he asked me what do I need, and I said, come to Minyan tomorrow morning. He's like, Jennifer. So I'm like, you asked me what I want, and I'm telling you what I want. So come to Minyan tomorrow morning. Beseder, I see in the window, I'm davening in my kitchen, I see in the window outside, he's there with his talis over his head. And I see the tefillin sticking out. Comes in afterwards, he says, I'm sorry, I left you a pile of dust out there. I haven't used my tefillin since my bar mitzvah. Beseder. He shows me his arm, he says, look what you did to me, and I said, that's the most gorgeous tattoo. He says, okay, now tell me what do you need, what can I do for you? I said, come back tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Jenny, he's like, what are you doing to me? I felt like Queen Esther, come back tomorrow, So he did, he came back. And he didn't come back the third morning, which I was very sad about. But he also does night shifts from Ramadan, whatever, so sad then. And then it's not the kind of thing you can send a message and ask, are you still putting on tefillin, right? So I'm living in suspense. And then I did a shift this past Motzei Shabbos, so 2 weeks before that, I did a shift and I see him there. He was just finishing a shift, comes over and he says, I want you to know, every night I say Kriyat Shema. And every morning I say Modeh. And then I put on my tefillin and I say Shema. I'm completely blown away. And then I did a shift this past Motzei Shabbos with him again. This time we did the whole shift together, and he's telling me that now he's also doing Tehillim. I see his whole personality. Usually when something doesn't go his way, he gets nice and angry. And he's telling me how, sometimes he feels, he falls, and how does he pick up? And I said, this is growth. Sometimes we fall. And then on Monday, I was in Binyamin's room, and I keep going in there thinking, well, the background to that is Monday morning, I was like a little sad. I'm like, Binyamin, why aren't you talking to me? Just tell me something. What are you doing all day? Like, just anything. So then I went into his room, and I found some, notes that he wrote, and his Elul, plan from yeshiva. Amazing stuff. I'm like, thank you. I guess it's better in writing because then you feel like you're making it up that he's talking to you. But so now I got to see. But one thing that he did have was this book of Eitzah, of Echut HaChaim, advice for quality of life. A little pamphlet that his Rosh Yeshiva from Eilat wrote, and I'm flipping the pages, and there's one page that has highlighted mark with the corner tucked down. And it's about how to get up after you fall. I sent that to Noam. I'm showing him how the whole book has nothing in it except one highlighted page and the lines of how you get up after you fall. So Binyamin, he's doing his thing. He's helping everybody out. But when we were running that race, and we're going on the uphill, and he had his hand on my back. See, I use that as a visual for myself. Things are rough. Picture Binyamin pushing my back. He's got me. And he's pushing us all. By the way, there's another piece to that story, that when he was doing his Masa Kumta, he was, in order to finish, he was a paratrooper. And within the paratroopers, he was like of the elite unit in there, which I didn't even realize until I said to somebody recently, he was Chapak Magad. He's like, ooh. I was like, I don't even know what that means, but great. I don't know actually what he did in Gaza, but he, when he was the end, before you get your red beret, you have to do, for the paratroopers, a 70-kilometer hike run. Again, with all the gear that I can fit into. And so we met them on the way, the last few kilometers, and we ran with them. And so, as the little Jewish mama that runs, I'm like trying to hold his bag behind him and help him out and run with him, trying to help him. And I just thought, you know what, this is what it is. I help you, you help me. I got your back, you got mine. And he's got ours. And as Hashem will keep holding all of our backs until we finish the sprint. But this is a little taste of Binyamin. So I don't know what the time we're going into.
Well, would you take some questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Wait, can I ask you before you take it, can you share one of that list that you shared at the Shloshim?
Okay.
Because actually this gear is so goal-oriented and how you utilize the exchange on it. Do you mind?
I'm starting with the first question, but afterwards, maybe if anyone else has questions.
So basically, this, I don't know if anyone's heard of Binyamin's list. It seems to be making its rounds, but one of the gifts I found, my sixth night of Hanukkah gift that I got from Binyamin was, I was looking in his room again to try and a little taste of Binyamin, a little something. And I found a piece of paper, folded, in his drawer, and I open it up, and there is a list of things, and the title is Ani Rotzeh. He made a list of things that he wanted. So there we were, sixth night of Hanukkah, it was our family night, and now I come down, this is gonna be I'm surprising my family with now, how Binyamin is now, with us at dinner. And we're trying to read through this list, which wasn't so easy with messy handwriting, but we got through most of it, and then I've had the rest of it, a special ed teacher basically read it and explain to me what he wrote. But on this list, it was a list of 55 things of Ani Rotze. What do I want? And his list. Now, when I tell you that like Uman was like the big change, you were trying to figure out when he wrote this list, and the third thing or so on the list was, I want to go to Uman and come back with lights, like Lachzorim Orot. And that's why we realized it was actually, he wrote this after the first time he went to Uman and before he went to his second time, because otherwise he wouldn't have even like thought to say these things. Anyway, whatever. So he's 16 when he wrote this list. Now you are all past 16, but if I were to ask you when you were 16, what would be on your list? You can probably come up with a list of, somebody's, I don't know, cars and loidatma. We all have our bucket lists. I've got, certain races and certain this, and I want to, do another course in this and be a gardener for that, right? I mean, we all have like our, and then, but Binyamin's list was quite different, and I bet you if you were to write your list now, even now, as opposed to 5 months ago before Israel, before war, you would also have a different list. But okay, we'll leave that alone for now. But he had a lot of, let me just put it this way. Out of his list of about 55 things, there's probably about a handful of things from the age of 16 to 21, probably about a handful of things that he didn't master. And in all fairness, one of them is to be married. And one of them is like basically the Tchias HaMesim and Mashiach, which maybe that is arguable. I don't know, maybe it's on the way and you could give him a check on that one. And one was bad handwriting, that he wanted good handwriting, so I don't give him that. So you're down to like another 2 things that he, so things on his list, I'll tell you a few of them. Well, one was no smartphone, to live without a smartphone. He couldn't understand why people would be on their phone when they're with the people they're on their phone with. Like, why are you messaging people about like what you're eating when you're sitting and having breakfast with them, you know what I'm saying? But the whole concept of smartphone, he was so anti. And I think that was one of his greatest weapons, really, because he actually lived. He always got upset that why are we taking pictures? What are you going to do with it? Because we know that they stay on our phones. And but now, first of all, I'm grateful I didn't always listen to him, and I still took pictures with him. But he didn't understand the whole concept of like, why would you be just on your phone the whole time instead of living life? And another one was to be modest, which he gets a big fat check on that one. He never wanted the kavod. He never wanted people to even know he did things. In fact, there was a friend of his who was building a gate, wanted to build a gate around his house, like to protect from, that his kid in the farm for his children to not run out. And he bought everything, but then he didn't have a chance to build it. Binyamin literally went there one day and put up the gate and then left. And the guy comes home from work and he sees Binyamin's, he sees that someone put the gate up. Like, this is like stuff that he does. He just does and without saying, and he leaves. What else is on that list? Lachyot oneg Shabbos. He wanted to live a life of Shabbos, of enjoying Shabbos. He wanted to go into Chayalim with his families, that he should be loved, that he should not speak lashon hara about other people, that he should only think good thoughts about people, that people should only have the good things to say about him. He had a list, and he gave him a purpose, or because he had a purpose, he wrote it to paper. But even though there were a lot of zigzags along the way, he knew where he wanted to go. And I think that's what got Binyamin to be the Binyamin that we know, right? He had a vision of what he wanted to be. In fact, what I'm learning now is that he had even a bigger vision. The list was, I think, just the 16-year-old writing. That was just the beginning of his journey. Some of the things I'm finding that he wrote are really even greater than that. He really looked up to Tanakh figures. He saw them as role models. His favorite Sfarim, that was part of his Elul was going over 2 prakim a day of Yoshua, Shoftim, Malachim, Shmuel. Because these are the characters who built Eretz Yisrael, the real Eretz Yisrael. In the army, it was election time. One of the elections was during his army time, and Binyamin didn't want to vote. Now, there were over 100 and something people in the room, and Binyamin made it very clear he wasn't going to vote. And when they asked him, they're like, no, you have to vote. Every soldier votes. And he said, the government doesn't believe in Kedushat Haaretz, and they're not going to make decisions based on halacha. I'm not voting for them. And they said, please just put a white piece of paper in, just to like look good. Make it look like you're voting. Binyamin said, I'm not giving them the pleasure. I'm not voting. He's the only soldier out of his entire, but he believes in Kedusha, so he was going to stick by his principles. And he had no issues of self-confidence, you see. He can stand up for himself just fine. Binyamin was really just about, you believe in something, you do it, and all of his lists just proved all of that. When you want something pure, you want something good, that's what I want it to be. That's what he strove for.
Any questions?
I can keep talking. You might as well ask. I can tell you what people usually ask. Seriously, I've had every question. So if you do have a question, honestly, like, I can take it. And if not, I'll tell you why you don't want to. But I take it all. Yeah.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
How are your kids doing with this?
I was going to say that one.
Is that a question you want?
That was the one I was going to say, always ask. Very good question. Kids are mostly very good. The younger two, actually I shouldn't even say that. The youngest one, so she's 10, she's aware that she's not aware. She's aware that she doesn't understand, that this is like something permanent. And she says, I don't know when I'm going to understand that. So I hope by the time she realizes that she doesn't understand it, it won't be a question anymore. Because, we're working towards Chayas Mason. That's where destination. Second above her, so the next one is a 12-year-old. He had a hard day yesterday, and I'm sure the news didn't help the situation. It was a rough evening with him. He was pretty sad, which was really the first time in a long time. And sometimes that gives me comfort to see them. Not just, they're sad, they remember, but they're sad like they're feeling. So I do take comfort when they feel emotion. To which I gave him Binyamin's tefillin, and I said, hold it. And I said, then you can even take Binyamin's tefillin and go up to his room and talk to him there. And that was what he did. And I heard him crying, and it's okay. Because he knows that we cry. All our kids know that we cry. I have no problem crying in front of them, but they also know that we live. There's music playing, doors always open, sometimes when it shouldn't be. But there's, people are always in and out, and we're always going, and we're always doing, and the kids know we live life. So when they have hard days, it's very welcomed, because that's really part of it. And again, I'll go to Simchas and I will dance, and sometimes, and then I'll cry. And Zebasada, that's all part of the Talich, and I think this is our entire nation right now. Our entire nation is figuring out how we juggle feeling pain and feeling happiness all at once. But this is what we do. We feel pain and we feel happiness all at once, and sometimes there's one emotion that's taking over more, and sometimes another emotion takes over more. But as long as we can feel joy, feeling pain is besada.
Do you have any other children who are in the army right now?
Good question. Oh, actually, it made me realize I didn't finish answering your question, and it's going to tie into that one. A 16-year-old is in school. He's actually doing great. It's the 19-year-old who has to make the decision about the army now. And he's very torn. Now, see, the way it works in the army is once you lose a child, or maybe a parent also, I don't know exactly, but then he can't automatically go into the army. We have to sign off on him. We have to give official permission that he can not go to the army. Obviously, he's going to do army, but be combat. And this Yehuda wants to be a paratrooper like his brother, although not because of Binyamin, what happened to him, but even before, he already told Binyamin he wanted to be a paratrooper. And it's really now a question of, now I'm happy to sign off on that because I feel like, first of all, Bezrat Hashem, the war is going to be over and we're not going to need armies and all that stuff anyway. But also because we don't work with statistics in Yiddishkeit. Just because something happened to one doesn't mean it's going to happen to another, unless Hashem wills it. And if Hashem wants it to happen in a car accident or here or a sickness or whatever, zeyeh, ma'achadli where. Otherwise it should be like Binyamin al Kiddush Hashem, and not some other silly, remote on the floor and you fall, right? Like this is going to be, let him. My husband's not necessarily holding in that place. And my Yehuda, the sweetie, won't do unless he feels we're 100%. But I said that, and I don't want, he doesn't know that my husband and I think differently. He thinks that we're unified front, so let's keep that between us and the recording. But the idea is that, I said, if you want to go, it will be 100%. The decision is yours. You get to choose. If you don't want to, we're behind you too. So we are letting him decide, which he kind of wanted us to make a decision for him, but too bad. You have to be a big 19-year-old to make your own decision. So we will be supportive of him. Any other questions?
You end with how you spoke out in the ship and you gave this link. Everyone is doing something. His legacy should be a good
Yeah. Perfect. Exactly. So, there are three projects that we're basically doing in Binyamin's memory. Binyamin, so the war started, as we know, Simchas Torah, and he had been in Azad, he hadn't been home since then, since he went in on that day. But Erev Sukkot, he surprised us with telling us that on this farm out in Neve Tzuf, he came to Yontif, literally shows up minutes before, not minutes before, but very close to Yontif, very filthy, very stinky. And he had just finished planting a vineyard out in the farm. And this was what he wanted. Again, how much of it's because he likes wine versus loving the land? It's the same thing. It's like how much does he love cows, and that's why he herds them. He doesn't love cows. He wants to, take care of the land, but he does love wine. But so he planted a vineyard, and now, thank God, the Moatzai of Mate Binyamin gave another 20 dunams of land for more vineyards. I don't know how many acres that is, but it's a lot. We're hoping that we get more, and so that's one project we're doing, is expanding the vineyards. And I have to learn this inside myself, but they said Hargofna, where they got the land, has to do with the wines going for the Beis HaMikdash. That's supposedly what it was in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, that those wines were used. To which I answered, I don't have 4 years. I'm not waiting that long. So someone will pinch hit wine in the meantime for the Nisu Chayalim until Binyamin's vineyards are ready, but okay. Another project is that we are, Be'ezrat Hashem, looking to open a yeshiva for non-religious, soldiers in particular. A lot of these soldiers, they're putting on tefillin and they're wearing tzitzis and they're singing all the songs. They see on Hashem, they believe in Hashem now, but they don't know the first thing about Shabbos or Parsha. They don't know. So we want to have a retreat, pampering style kind of place that we're going to do seminars for them, and we're building that up in Tzahal. So that's on the way. And the third, which is, unless you want to give me money for the first two projects, the third one is really more for you. And that is, in order to limamesh the karevet hageulah, to bring Mashiach, we need to rise up. We need to step up. And we have a website, airley.org. And the way you spell Airley is A-I-R-L-E-Y.
I'm putting it in the group.
Okay, because there are all sorts of variations of how we spell E-I-R. I don't even know how people come up with some of these things, but whatever. It's not the hardest name, but anyway. Believe me, in Hebrew, they also seem to get it wrong. Aleph, Resh, Lamed, Yod, where they add in all these extra yuds all over, I don't know. But anyway, so we have a website, and on that website, there's a chesed challenge. It's taking on a chesed to... I keep saying, everyone says a chesed or a mitzvah, whatever you want to take on. It could be, again, the 5 minutes of, not speaking Lashon Hara, or take on, a whole mess of Masechta a day, love badly. But people say that, I'm doing this project, Le'ilu Nishmas Binyamin, I'm doing this, Le'ilu Nishmas Binyamin, and it's all very beautiful. Although I don't really know if Binyamin needs to Ilui Nishmas. I think his neshama's beseder gomor. He's way up there. Binyamin's just fine. He doesn't need us to raise him any higher. He's as high as can be. But Binyamin's getting us to la'alot et nishmatenu. Binyamin's getting us to raise ourselves up. He's getting us through him, through his koach, through his ruach. He's getting us to take things on so we can rise up and we can be zocha and worthy of bringing the Beis HaMikdash b'ezrat Hashem. Shenizkeh.
I just want to be makir tov to Jen. I think everyone, after you process her beautiful, magnificent speech that we have a lot to learn from, recognize that she zoomed into one chayal. Imagine what's going on in this country, the homes that are affected.